Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Go get 'em, guys.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast in association with Andy's Man Club. Remember, lads, it is okay to talk. This episode, we are 50% British, 25% Irish, and as you can see, we're also 25% American this time. But as always, we are 100% Giants. Dan's working this week, but I'm happy to welcome in one half of the stellar He's a Giant podcast, Monte, who will be adding his views on the upcoming running back, wide receiver, and quarterback class later in the show. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Doing good, man. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be coming on. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully, we'll get a show on with when Sal has time, not being a doctor, and get him here.
Yeah, my old doctor. I mean, that's a heavy job, so don't blame him at all. Boys, time for the big guns before free agency takes over for 3 weeks. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Looking forward to getting into this one. It's probably going to be one of the more interesting episodes that we do. Obviously, looking at kind of the weapons on the offense, and there could be arguments that we need players at every group, including quarterback, from this. So it's going to be good to get into it. And Monte, thank you ever so much for joining. Feels surreal having someone on who I've listened to on previous podcasts. I listen to your show all the time and that. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of the equivalent of having Mel Kiper or Daniel Jeremiah on our show.
I appreciate that. No, I've been appreciating all the support you guys have given us. It's been awesome, and it's been really fun doing the draft stuff this year.
Yeah, I just want to say a massive welcome as well to Monte, because as Shane was saying, I've been watching his content sort of all this sort of season, and it's so good to sort of have something that you're so interested in the sense that the draft stuff is something I've gotten interested in over the last few years, and obviously being a Giants fan for ages, and to have some really, really good content that's so specific to things I'm interested in, it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, man. It seems like it, people have valued the type of content we're doing. So, that's all we could have hoped for. It's definitely an interest of ours. We always were talking drafty around, Sal and I. So just might as well do it publicly for everybody to see.
On the tank train quite early, because I'm a big fan of getting on the tank train, about October time.
Yeah. I mean, the Giants force us to start looking at the draft a little bit early every single year. So
was that kind of the catalyst for the spawn of the podcast? Was just how the season went last year?
Well, I mean, funny enough is the year before we were able to wait and doing that stuff. We made the playoffs and stuff like that. And then, there's just something that Sal and I like to do. And we wanted to do something a little bit unique and bring something else to the Giant community. But it's kind of just, unfortunately for us as Giants fans, worked out well, where it was kind of the perfect time. Talking to Justin Pennick from Talking Giants, and he was talking to me about it. He's like, hey, timing is everything with this stuff. And he's like, you guys managed to time it up pretty well, because it was the year where everybody's focusing on the draft. And even we said we were going to do the quarterback review last. We reviewed every single position. That's how we kind of started out this podcast. And turned out the last episode we did lined up with the week after Daniel Jones tore his ACL. So again, just timing was good, unfortunately, there.
Now, before we kind of get into the meat and drink of everything, if you're watching this live on YouTube or Facebook, please do join in with the conversation on the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already, and give the video a lovely thumbs up. It helps us with all the algorithm shenanigans. Before we go through to the draft prospects, let's kick off with what we normally do. So Giant news and rumours. And Kev, there was some pretty big news yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yesterday was the tag deadline, and ended up with no tags for McKinney, no tag for Barkley. Both will hit the free agency market for the first time in their careers. I mean, Barkley was up for maybe the franchise tag at 12 million. It would have been the second year that we tagged him. McKinney, there was talk about the franchise tag, but at 17 million just seemed a bit rich. There was more talk of the transition tag at 13 million was sort of a possibility there. But just to note that Art Stapleson's observation regarding McKinney and a potential free agent target, Jermaine Illuminor, they share the same agent, and that David Mulugeta, which could explain why they didn't sort of put the transition tag on McKinney to avoid any bad blood. So when they come back to negotiation tables for McKinney, but also for maybe Jermaine Illuminor, who's someone that we've talked about in this podcast in the past. Shane did say that, last week at the Combine that he mentioned the tag wasn't off the table for Barkley. But we went down the road of maybe letting him see free agency, sort of see his market, sort of see, maybe the grass isn't greener out there, financially as well. Barkley looks to be one of the top free agents, running backs. He's out there, but it's a stellar group as well. Like, just looking here, you got Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler. I mean, these are the type of running backs that would be the top running back in normal free agency markets. There's rumors, around Barkley speaking with Stroud of the Texans, maybe going down there, seeing, they've got a cheap rookie deal for the quarterback, bring in someone with experience and class like Saquon and maybe overpay a little bit for him, because you can do that with the rookie contract at the quarterback position. So we'll be interested to see sort of what type of offers he gets out there. And speaking about Xavier McKinney, he was actually on the Up and Adams show this morning, and a quote that he was saying was, I'm big for the Giants right now. That's where I want to be. But like I said, if something can't get done, obviously, I've got to weigh my other options and see what else is better or the best situation for me out there. So we did speak about it before that, he was on the is it Pat Leonard podcast, was it? Yeah. And he spoke about, that he kind of got the feeling that he wanted to come back, and it wasn't a case of he was being a mercenary going out there for the biggest deal. I mean, it would have to be close to a good deal, obviously, for him to come back. But I definitely get the impression that, this is where he wants to be, as he said. We'll be interested to see what the market is for both players. I mean, speaking about safety as well, that we've seen recently, especially the last couple of days, at the safety position, a lot of teams are releasing good safeties to kind of get themselves cap compliant. Who was it? Simmons from Broncos just got released recently. And Jamal Adams got released, although his career has taken a little bit of a nosedive. Eddie Jackson, Quandre Diggs, Kevin Byard, Micah Hyde, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So both markets are really, really saturated at the moment. So that kind of gives me a bit of hope for both players. Maybe so more McKinney, but teams aren't going to be looking to pay in these guys a lot. So they might have to just sort of take a deal that they might not want to take. So why not take that with the Giants? But so speaking about that now, so with these two players, do you see any of them coming back, or both of them? Or do you see us actually going for one of these other players out there that I've just mentioned? What about you, Shane? I'll start with you.
I think the two that most likely to come back is probably going to be McKinney, but I wouldn't be surprised if neither come back, just because I think McKinney's going to want too much money. And like you say, when you rattle off the names of the safeties that have been released over the last few days, I mean, Seattle cut Adams and Diggs, and I know they freed up a hell of a lot of money. So I was talking to a Seattle mate just a couple of days ago, and I says, maybe you're looking at making a play at McKinney and you're linking McKinney and J-Love up again and trying to recreate what we had with them, a couple of seasons ago when we got to the playoffs. I'd like him. Of course, I'd absolutely love them both back. Without a doubt. Saquon's my boy, Penn State, 26. I'm not going to forgive him if he goes to Philly, though. That is the one thing I cannot let go. That's obviously a rumor that's come out today.
Lines have to be drawn somewhere.
Saquon, you can go anywhere. You can go anywhere apart from in division. Just don't go in division. And to be honest with you, if he ended up at Houston, I think I'd have a little bit of a soft spot for Houston then, because they're doing things the right way. You look at the way they've drafted last year and making the moves and that, and it's a team that's kind of always overlooked in that division. So, if he went there, I'd fully understand it. Like I say, in regards to McKinney, I just think it's going to come down to money at the end of the day. He's going to want to be paid like a top 5, maybe even a top 3 safety. And at that point, you have to ask the question, is that money best invested there, or are we better off going for maybe a cheaper safety, and then we can invest more money into a new running back, let's say a Josh Jacobs, who's got history with our O-line coach, and another safety as well that's going to be cheaper.
So, Monte, just over to you. What's your feelings on both the players? Can you see one come back, both come back, or do you have a preference yourself?
I mean, I definitely prefer Xavier McKinney. I don't necessarily know if I want Saquon back, but I definitely would prefer to have Xavier McKinney back. I'm definitely not in the camp where like I think it's like the end of the world if we lose Xavier McKinney. Like I think it kind of is what it is, but I would definitely like to have him back. And I think there's a good chance he does come back, to be honest with you. I think, part of not giving him that transition tag seems to be kind of like a good faith. We're going to continue negotiating. You keep negotiating with us, and let's try to get this figured out before before free agency. And probably has an aspect of like, look, we're not going to limit your market by transition tagging you, because when you do that type of thing, it does limit the teams who want to bid on you because they don't want their money tied up for a week while the Giants decide if they want to match or not. So they probably said like, hey, just come back to us with whatever you offer you get, and like we'll see if it's something we're willing to match. And be honest with you, with all these safeties being cut, safety is a position that gets screwed in free agency a lot. I could see him coming back cheaper than we are seeing right now with like that 16 million area. I could see it coming down closer to like 12 to 14, kind of like we were hoping. So we'll see. There will be other good safeties out there if that happens. As far as Saquon, he could come back. I think it would have to be pretty cheap. I would see probably something around like the $8 million annual mark if he came back. So you'd have to have a really like bad free agent market out there for him to come back, I think. But the running back position, you never know. I'll say with the Eagles thing, he's a grown man. He can do whatever he wants. I think that would be a bad move for him. For a guy who like wants to get into the New York media after he retires, and a whole reason why he's trying to stay here, there's one way to mess up that whole plan, and that's going to the Eagles. You're not getting to the New York media after that. Nobody wants you back after that. So, choose wisely, Saquon Barkley. You can do whatever you want, but I wouldn't do that if I was you.
Fair play. And so, Craig, what's your initial thoughts on both those players? And again, is there any of those free agent players that tickle your fancy?
It's interesting because there is one safety that you didn't mention there that I wouldn't be too opposed to with ties within the organisation, and that's Poyer. Probably one of the older prospects that's been released there, but would probably still do a job, and would be nice to sort of see him paired back up with Dabes and Joe Shane, who obviously he's going to have ties to. Now, we did put out a poll yesterday just in anticipation of this question, and it's interesting to see sort of how close it all was. So 37% said re-sign McKinney only, 35% said both sign for new teams, 21% re-sign both, only 8% reckon we re-sign Barkley as a solo kind of thing. A lot of people seem to think that both, it's more likely that both would come back than just Barkley. And, it does kind of look like it's trending that way. And I would be 90% sure they've both got those kind of gentleman agreements. Carl Duggar was transition tagged, and I think someone turned around and said it was only the 4th time it had been used in the last 16 years or something stupid like that. Like, it's not something that's thrown around as much as the franchise tag is on a year-by-year basis. So I think they've kind of just almost like a little olive branch, like, we're not going to do it to you, X, but we'd like you back. And, NYG Mason said, oddly, I get the feeling X is more likely to come back than Saquon. And, I think that is just the general consensus. And while we're sort of talking other comments, keep them coming. I mean, we've got loads coming through here. Monty's obviously a popular man. People tune in. So, anyone who's got any questions for any of us, just let us know in the comments. We'll bring them up. Shane, outside normal rumblings that we expected about the Giants, there was a bit of a surprise rumour about retirement that might end up having a bit more to it than we first thought.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what I would have said. That, to be honest, it started off as a rumor, and then obviously it's come out today that it seems to be a little bit more than a rumor. Dan Duggan put an article on The Athletic in regards to it earlier on, and that's Darren Waller. He's apparently contemplating retirement. It was first reported last Friday. He'd considered retirement during the off season, but he made the decision to run in 2024. But then just a few minutes later, an update come out contradicting this, as Waller reached out to the Post and confirmed he was still undecided on his future, and he hadn't made a decision either way. Now, if he doesn't return to the NFL and he does retire, the Giants will be left with a dead cap of around 7.9 million, whilst gaining around 6.2 million in cap space. Now, I know that Darren, in The Athletic today, Darren Waller's come out and said that he's mindful the Giants need a decision, but he's not got a decision yet. I think for me, we kind of, I get the impression the organisation's not giving him a deadline or an ultimatum, but you'd like to think we'll get this cleared up ideally before free agency, but it doesn't look like it's going to be, because we need to know where we stand. Do we need to go into free agency looking at tight end? Does it maybe rejig the draft board that the Giants had planned if he does retire? The Giants gave up a third-round pick just last year for Waller, and have got 12 games, 452 yards and a touchdown out of him. If he was to retire, what would you make of that trade now, Kev?
Hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Do not say you want Tony back.
Oh my God! Yeah, we get back for nothing. The way things are going over there,
he might get cut.
Yeah. I mean, so the trade was a very good trade. We know that. We liked it at the time. It made sense. We didn't kind of know his mindset, and we didn't know his sort of like. We knew his injury history, but we didn't really realize that would continue with us. It obviously doesn't look great now. But part of me is feeling like, okay, let's just move on. I mean, we've talked on this podcast about how happy we were with Bellinger's rookie season, right? And we said how much of a decent, solid, all-round tight end he was. And I've said in the past, I'd be happy for him to develop into a number one. Now, his development was a little bit hindered last year with the Waller trade and, him getting the eye injury. But we were talking about bringing in a third tight end anyway. Now let's, maybe look at free agency, maybe look for a half-decent mid-tier second tight end and roll with Bellinger. I mean, like I said, the trade looks bad now, but at the time I felt it was very good. But I do believe that, we can get enough out of Bellinger to get enough production where tight end position isn't a hindrance.
Monte, what do you make of the Waller trade now?
Yeah, man. I mean, I would still do it again. Obviously not in hindsight, but like I thought it was, obviously the Tony move was good, and I felt last year, it just wasn't a good wide receiver free agency. And if you're going to, invest in a guy like Daniel Jones, you needed to bring in like a big time, playmaker and make that decision. And to be honest with you, like when he was on the field, Daniel Jones wasn't utilizing him to his full ability. And I think that is at least something we can get from it. It's like, look, you saw him get used by Tyrod. You didn't see him get used by Daniel Jones. It's like there's something to take away or something to learn from there, which was a goal from going into this year. As far as like him coming back next year, I was a big component. Like, why wouldn't we bring back Darren Waller? Like, he still played 11 games. He's still really talented. And then the retirement stuff came out, and I'm like, look, if he considered retirement and he's come back, then let him come back. Like, he's allowed to do that, but just be all in. And then he immediately like comes out. It's like, no, I'm still considering it. What I've been saying is, and it sounds like we're not getting this, is if I was Joe Shane, I would say, hey, Darren, you got to tell me what your plans are before free agency, because I got to structure my free agency based off of that. And to me, I mean, look, you don't need to cut him before you get his replacement or anything like that, but I would be looking to get a replacement for Darren Waller in free agency at this point, whether it's a wide receiver, tight end, or whatever. And if you get one, I would cut Darren Waller at this point, unfortunately. I can't trust him.
And just to add to that quickly, going back to the question, there's a trade. What do you think of the trade? I mean, the trade was very good. What kind of looks a bit worse now is restructuring his contract and pushing some of the cap back to this year, Because if we didn't do that, that 7.9 million, that we get all that. We'd have pretty much nearly 14 million in cap space from releasing him now. So that part of it just looks a little bit more like, ooh, salty.
Yeah, I mean, we would have at least we would have paid it last year anyway, so it's just kind of like push the responsibility down a little bit. I'll say the funny part about this whole, if you look at it as one trade, Kadarius Toney, Darren Waller, whatever, the best player we get out of this might be Trey Hawkins. He might be the best player on both sides.
I mean, Holty's just said, sounds like his heart isn't in it. And it's interesting he says that, because my point is something I actually saw on Twitter earlier. So Sarah McCrory mentioned that she spoke to Waller on a podcast last year, and he admitted that he's never had an overwhelming passion for the game. And so if it's already feeling like a drag to him to come back and do it all over again, and you don't have that passion for the sport, I would assume that it then just weighs you down even more. I mean, Monte probably won't get this reference, but Arsenal have a player, Ben White, who notoriously doesn't watch any Premier League games, doesn't watch any soccer games, nothing at all. He just goes out there and sees it as a job. And I think if you see it as a job and you don't love the game and you don't love being, smashed into the ground, 20 times a game potentially, I think it's very difficult to motivate yourself to go, do you know what? I need to get back in the gym, ready to be punched in the face, essentially. There's a cover on you Spurs in the, in the comments there. Right, last one. At the Combine, Rich Eisen, he's a busy man. But during his downtime, he heard an interesting rumour about Daniel Jones, and we might as well touch on it because everybody else has. Let's just preface it by saying he did say that he doesn't normally deal in rumour, that he may be way off, and that, maybe patently unfair. So bear in mind that this one's not fact. It's just something that he heard in the corridors. So what did he reveal on his Rich Eisen show this last week? The Giants are absolutely done with Daniel Jones. Done. Might have to play him this year, but that ain't it. The words I heard at the Combine multiple times were buyer's remorse. So, do you guys think this is likely an accurate rumour that went round? And do you think buyer's remorse really hits the nail on the head for what we all feel as Giant fans on Daniel Jones? Monty, you might as well start this one off.
Sure. Look, man, I don't think that this is coming out of nowhere. I think it kind of just confirming what we've been hearing. You heard, Mike Garafolo, he said, 76.9% chance. I know it's just, you just threw that number out, but he said very, very likely we're going to go quarterback, is basically said it. Mike Garafolo is one of the best national reporters out there who started in the New York Giants beat. There's nobody more plugged into the New York Giants than Mike Garafolo. I'll tell you that. You're hearing it over and over. The Giants are trying to trade up for a quarterback. Look, I don't know how you could not think that they're out on him. Because this year, and he said this, he might start this year. But if you're looking at this, do you really think that there's anything Daniel Jones can do this year to not be a cap casualty the following year when you have more guaranteed money kicking in with his injury history, with what he has to prove on a year coming off of injury? I think you'd be crazy to think that you can't see that coming down the pipeline and know where this is heading. So I think they know where this is heading. I don't think this is any indictment on Daniel Jones and how they see him as a person or anything like that, but it's just the reality of the situation. 2 neck injuries, an ACL, and just the money he's going to be owed a year from now with a potential out. I think we can all kind of see where this is going. And I think that was pretty clear to anybody talking at the Combine.
Shane, today is the 1-year anniversary of the Daniel Jones contract.
Of course it
Thoughts?
Is.
I mean, it's kind of hard not to have buyer's remorse in one way, because the season didn't go how anyone envisages it going, whether it's DJ, the front office, the ownership, or even us as fans. No one envisages the season going the way that it did. Nobody envisioned Daniel having the continued injury issues that he had. Obviously, he had the neck issue, and then obviously ACL, which, let's face facts, ACL could have happened to absolutely anybody. It has happened to anybody in the past, and it will continue. There's no like previous injury to then have an ACL. And ACL just unfortunately happens. That's just the way it is in this sport. Do they have boys' remorse though? I just think it's 6 of one, half a dozen in the other. I think the problem was that it was either playoffs or buyer's remorse, in my opinion. I don't think there was ever going to be any middle ground where you'd say, "Oh yeah, DJ did okay." I think it was either you met the playoffs and continue on from last season, or improve, or everyone's going to go, "He's a bust. We've overpaid. We've messed up." Now, if you could go back 12 months, do the Giants maybe give Barkley the contract and tag Daniel potentially? Who knows, kind of thing. But it will be interesting. Look, everyone knows for a fact, doesn't matter what happens, DJ's on this team for the next 12 months. That is a matter of fact. Now, it's going to be interesting to see whether he's on this team with genuine quarterback competition. And I'm not talking about Tommy Cutlett or, just
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if we do go for a quarterback. It's that time of year now where you're going to hear all sorts of rumours. I've heard that the Patriots are looking to move out. I've also heard the Patriots, if Daniels is there, they're going to take him. You're going to hear all kind of rumours. You just got to trust this front office that if they are out on Daniel Jones, that they're going to make the right decisions in regards to moving up to get their guy, and that their guy is the guy.
Kev, buyer's remorse?
I mean, there's so much to unpack here, isn't there? I mean, it's such a tricky one. I mean, going back to last year, like saying they should have done Saquon instead of Daniel Jones. I mean, Daniel Jones' franchise tag last year was 22 million. And that we would have had to eat that year. We would have had to sign Saquon to a longer deal. We might not have been able to sign someone like Bobby Carrick. Might not have had the cap flexibility. That's another matter. I mean, they wanted it to work. He's shown glimpses of why he deserves a contract, and he got a fair contract considering what type of quarterback they expected him to be. The injuries haven't helped. I mean, they want the front office wanted it to work. Head coach wanted it to work. Daniel Jones wanted it to work, but in many ways, I think Daniel Jones is broken. I think he is physically not up to it now, but also mentally. I think as an organization, we've done it to him. The old line has done it to him. I think he sees ghosts now. I just think he doesn't throw well under pressure now. So all the attributes he's got, you're not going to have a clean pocket every single snap, and we definitely haven't. So I hate to say it because I had such high hopes for him to be, a really good sort of like quarterback, maybe a top 10 one who could come out and be functional. But I just think, like I said before, I think in many ways he's just broken now, and I think mentally not checked out, but I think it's so hard for him to come back from.
So before we move on to draft prospects, Shane, was there something you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, so obviously we're going to start talking draft prospects at the minute, and Monte's on the show at the minute as well. And I just thought I'd sort of send a question over Monte's way that I'm curious of, and maybe the listeners am. So obviously over here in the UK and Ireland with the draft, it's kind of an all day thing. We get to work all day, and we get the joys of staying up till 1 a.m. to watch it start, and we get to get to bed at like sort of 4 or 5 a.m. depending on either when the Giants pick or if you're motivated to watch all 32 picks.
Yeah.
So I was curious for you and maybe Sal as well. And what does draft day look like for you guys?
So, I mean, draft day feels like a holiday for me. I feel like it feels like Christmas when I wake up. Typically on Thursday, it's like I work the Thursday, but like it's basically like like the Friday before like Christmas break at work. Like I'm like only like half working. I'm just watching NFL Network and I'm on like Twitter and doing that thing. And then I usually get together with some friends and right after work, and we'll get some food and we'll sit down and we'll watch it. And then I'll take off Friday a lot and just do that, or I'll work Friday and do kind of the same thing where I'm just like I'm useless for those final 2 days of the week. But I sit down and watch the whole thing. I'll say the last year, this last draft, I didn't do as much close watching as I normally did because I had my for my bachelor party. I did it during the NFL draft. We all got a house and we watched the NFL draft together. But I was maybe a little bit too drunk to remember some of the picks. So I ended up like putting it up on like YouTube and like watching it for like going over the next week so I can hear the analysis, because I didn't get enough of that last time around.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because like for us, it's almost the same thing. So for this year, we didn't do it last year. We did it the year before. We all go to Kev's in his little war room that he's sitting in right now, as we've named it, and we'll watch it together. And I'd only been doing the pod for a month, 2 months when we did the first draft, and we did like live reactions to the Kayvon and Neil picks, which would be interesting to watch back because we were pretty excited for both. And yeah, we're doing that again this year, and we haven't officially revealed everything that's going to happen, but there's a lot that we're planning for this year, and to really kind of give a British and Irish perspective on it and try and go through the whole thing. But it is very much like a holiday. Like, we've got hotels booked up near Kev. I've got the Thursday off. I've got the Friday off. The weekend, I know I'm not doing much because I'll be watching the draft. So it's pretty much like a full thing.
It's like it's the longest day ever as well, because obviously it starts at 1 PM for us. So like we're up at like 9-10 in the morning. If you're having a little bit of a line, if people have got work, they get up at like sort of 6-7. Some people have little cheeky pair of naps, sort of when they go home from work, try and give them the energy. And then it's just like the longest day ever. You turn into a 24-hour bender without drinking.
I bet you that day 3 is pretty nice. That's like just like a nighttime, like kind of sit back and relax and watch the last few drafts, because we're starting, and I'm like waking up just in time for the draft at that point, because after the third round's over, I'm just still drinking. And I'm waking up. It's like 11 o'clock. I'm like, shit, I gotta eat breakfast and watch the draft.
The day 3 is nice, being at like 5 o'clock. It starts for us, I think.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good. That's a good time right there.
It does get a bit difficult as the teams try and get a little bit fruity with the way that they announce their 7-round picks, and it's like 1 a.m. and you're like, I really couldn't care less about an orangutan picking they're picking whoever they're picking. Like, it's great, but please.
And the thing is, we're still there, and like fans like us are like, we want to see the pick and analysis on every single pick in round 6. In round 7. We don't want to be like seeing a scroll across the bottom. Someone's picked someone. Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on, give me some analysis, please.
You have to wait like 15 minutes after the pick. But, oh, by the way, that pick happens. Here's our analysis.
Right. So I guess let's get into it. Combine's out the way. Top 5s are solidified. Most exciting offensive positions, taking nothing away from our beloved O-line. Let's start off with the running backs. As we always do, it will be Kev first. He'll give his top 5, then Shane, and then we'll talk about some of these prospects and why they're here. Let's just say we've kind of descended into chaos after last week, where Shane and Kev were kind of similar. So, Kev, there's your...
Well, me and Kev haven't seen each other's top 5. So, like last week, I hadn't seen Kev's because I'd avoided him. This week, we've sent him privately to Craig. So, like, I'm looking at that right now, and I'm like, okay.
Come on then, Kev. Walk us through your top 5.
So, from 5 to 1, I've gone for Blake Curran, Michigan. Number 4, Jalen Wright, Tennessee. Number 3, Audric Estime, Notre Dame. Number 2, Jonathan Brooks, Texas. Number 1, Trey Benson, Florida State University.
Cool. Shane, initial thoughts there? Are you going to call him a homer?
Oh, 100%.
I wear that with pride.
I was like, I wonder if he's going to put him in. I was like, it's Kev, of course he's going to put him in.
Right, so there's Shane. So Kev, this is your first look at Shane. Shane, take us through 5 to 1.
Yeah, so I've got 3 similar players, 3 of the same players, just in different positions. I've got Trey Benson at number 5. I've got Bucky Irving out of Oregon at 4. Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin at 3, Blake Corum, Michigan at 2, and Jonathan Brooks is number 1 out of Texas for me.
So come on then, Monty. Let's get some analysis on the two boys here.
This is where we get up the point. You're like, oh shit.
Man. Look, we were talking about this a little bit pre-show. Like, you could have a totally different top 5 from another person, and like you're seeing a little bit of that here. Like, there's just no true running back 1 in this draft, but there is like 7 or 8 guys that are kind of like all in that group. I'll start with Kev's. Trey Benson, I really like that as a running back 1. He is right on the edge for me. He's probably my running back 2, but I like him a lot. I mean, he's making it more difficult with me with how he tested at the combine. I mean, he ran sub 4.4, and he's one of the best tackle breakers in the country. He's a good pass protector. He's a good all around back. I think he has the best shot of being like a true all around like stud running back. Then Jonathan Brooks, their second, who Shane's number 1. This one's a difficult one with Jonathan Brooks because I really like Jonathan Brooks. I think he's probably the best running back in this class, but at the same time, I don't think he's like so far ahead of these guys that I can overlook the ACL. So that's been the thing with me with Jonathan Brooks is he's a lot of people's running back 1, and I like him. I don't have a problem with him being anybody's running back 1. I'm just like, I like so many guys in this class, and he wasn't like a Bijan or anything like that to me. So I'm just like, I feel like I naturally have to knock him down because just like it was already so close, but I definitely get that one. See, number 3, Audric Estime. He's a guy I really like too. He's a big bruiser. He's from the New York area. He didn't test that well in the 40. He ran like a 4.73 or something, but I kind of think combine stuff is overrated with these running backs to some extent. I think he fits his role. He's a good power back. You say Jalen Wright is out of Tennessee. He's a speedster, and I'll tell you, he's one of the best pass protectors in this draft. He's a phenomenal pass protector. He's a good pass catcher. If we move on from Saquon, you're gonna want somebody who you can trust as a pass protector on the field. Finally for this one is Blake Corum. Blake Corum, that's actually Sal's top guy. Sal loves Blake Corum. He's out of Michigan. He was, probably you could argue he's like the best running back in the country in 2022. He had a little bit down year coming off of the injury, but he's such like a well-rounded player. He's good at everything. Let's see. I'll just nail the last 2 players over here at Shane's. That's different that we can talk about. Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen is a 3 there. He's a total physical freak. I mean, I'm upset he didn't run because I think he would have absolutely killed it. His 10-yard split that like he supposedly runs. I forgot exactly what it was. You can find it in Feldman's freak list, but we mentioned on He's a Giant for our combine preview, but it's essentially along the lines of a 4.3 translation. Like, and he's like 250 pounds or whatever. Total freak. He's only 20 years old. He played all of last season at 19, like young, athletic. He's really big. Maybe not as nuanced of a running back as some of these other guys, but he's good enough there. And then, last but not least, I want to talk about is Bucky Irving here. The Bucky Irving, that is who my running back 1 is. I've had it very early in the season. I love Bucky Irving. He may not be the traditional running back, and he didn't test incredibly well. He had like a 4.5 something, but he has more targets than any of these running backs in the passing game. He's lined out wide more than any of these running backs in this draft. I'm just pull it up here. His numbers where he breaks tackles is crazy. He has 3.99 yards after contact, so he essentially averages 4 yards after the first contact, and he had 69 missed tackles forced, which is 11th in the country, and this is for 2 years in a row. His like efficiency he splits a lot of carries, so his efficiency for getting these missed tackles is crazy. He just makes everybody miss. He's a great receiver. He's great in like option routes and things like that. So I feel like he fits, like, especially what the Giants look for when you see like how interested they were in a guy like James Cook, for example. I feel like he fits that mold. He's like I've been saying he's like a Kirkland Jahmyr Gibbs. Like he's not quite as athletic, but he's talented, man. That's my favorite guy in this draft. But yeah, that's the kind of like my initial thoughts on everybody. What are some of you guys' thoughts on these guys?
I love the fact that you saying that he's a Kirkland Jamar Gibbs is basically our essential way of saying he's like an Audi or a Lidl version.
Yeah, exactly. Forgot that doesn't translate.
We have Costco over here, so we know Kirkland, but yeah, we definitely have some ropier stuff than Kirkland in here. Boys, I just want to get your opinion. For some reason, the graphic that we have for him has dropped off of StreamYard, so I can't bring it up. But Blake Corum, 27 touchdowns last year. But I was looking through his Lance Zierlein's kind of strengths and weaknesses, and Zierlein was saying just 12 of his last 45 touchdowns went for more than 5 yards. Like, is he just really a red zone threat, Blake Corum?
I think for me, Blake, I feel like I'll just put him at RB2 because of you look at the stats are there at the end of the day. The stats don't lie, and kind of what he's done on the field doesn't lie. I mean, in all honesty, for me, 240 attempts last year, 258 attempts this year. There's a little bit too much tread on the tires for my personal liking there, but I just felt that he had to be in my top 5. Jalen White, who Kev's got at 4, was a tough one for me to kind of leave out. I did want to put this is what I was on about to you, Craig, when I says like there was several guys I really wanted to put in my top 5, but he's a case of, well, I can only name 5, so kind of what do I do? But just going back to Blake Corum, I think for me, I think he's probably the one out of all these players that are on the screen now that's going to be interesting to see how he translates to in the NFL. Whether he can produce what he did. Like I say, there's a lot of wear on them legs at the end of the day. Over 500 attempts in 2 seasons is a hell of a lot of attempts.
Yeah, Kev, sorry, I just wanted to kind of touch just before I forget. This morning you text me. Dropping Bucky Irving out at number 4, popping Jalen Wright in. So let's bring up Jalen Wright's numbers. Just talk me through that thought process and why you decided that he came in over Bucky there.
Yeah, I mean, I just it's one of those things where, like, looking at the combine as well as sort of like where I had them, and just to say, I mean, we were kind of close in the sense that I had Bucky sort of popped out of the top 5, but I have him as number 6, and I have Braden Allen as number 7 on my list at the moment. So I'm very high on those players as well. I just think, I mean, some of the stuff I love about Jalen Wright. I mean, well, the 4.38 40 was phenomenal in the 40-yard dash. You know, 5'11", 210 pounds, still young as well. He's 21. I just think he's a really patient runner, and he's got that excellent long speed as well. And he does run with a bit of violence. I mean, he can get stuck behind the line a little bit, but he's just one of those players that I just, every time I kept watching him, I just sort of was like, he could take this to the house any second. And for me, with, you know, Irvin coming in at sort of like 5'9", 192 pounds and running a 4.55 was just a little bit of a, okay, then, well, Jalen Wright would just, you know, edge that for me at the moment. And just speaking about Blake Corum as well, I mean, like with Michigan, you know, the way they run the ball, he went for 1,200 yards last season. The thing is, you know, he gets a lot of short yardage touchdowns simply because Michigan run the ball. They don't really pass the ball, so they methodically move up the field, and get themselves to within a few yards for the entire defense to run on. So that's kind of why, like, he would score so many touchdowns being that close.
Anyone else want to jump in on any of the prospects a little deeper before we move on?
I'll just go back to my boy Audric Esme quickly. Just look, you know, a lot of people see that 4.71 40 and absolutely, you know, think to themselves, right, he's slow. But like, if you watch the film, if you watch the tape, you know, I watched every game of Notre Dame since 2011 when I jumped on the bandwagon. And you know, he's a patient runner, you know, he breaks tackles, but like, his 40-yard timer will hurt him. It will do. Just that's the nature of the beast. But like for example, like his 80-yard touchdown against NC State, he ran away from people. He was fast enough then. And if you see him, he gets into open space. He can run away from defenders. Now, I know that's college, not necessarily the NFL. But I just think he might not be a number one back in this, but to have him sort of come in and pound on a defense that's already tired, I think he could be a really, really good foil running as a tandem. And again, just on these running backs, I think Trey Benson's the only one I've got sneaking into the second round. And then the rest of them have all got sort of as third round players, like all of them. And that's what we were talking about before. They're so interchangeable.
What were you going to say there, Monty?
I'll say, like we mentioned before, there's about like 8 guys, and you can put them in any order. I'll say the one guy that didn't make either of your lists, which I think is fair, but what's worth mentioning is Marshawn Lloyd out of USC. I think he is also like right up in this tier of players. He fits a little bit more of that Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving type mold. He's a really good receiving back. He's a little bit stockier than like a Bucky Irving. Yeah, I don't remember his exact size measurements he came in, but he was like, I don't know, around like 5'10", 5'9", 5'10".
5'9", 220, which is solid.
So, and he's he's a really good receiver. He had a good year this year for USC. I believe he's a pretty good pass protector as well. He's a guy to keep an eye on. I think he's just as good as basically any guy in this list, except these guys are all really close.
So just before we move on to wide receiver, there's a question in the comments. I seem to recall a handful of people on X/Twitter clamour for a late round nab of Frank Gore Jr. a little while ago. Is this a name sting, or could he be a steal?
I like Frank Gore Jr. I think he's a good player. I think he could be a steal. He's a little bit smaller, so that's going to be a question mark with him. I mean, so was his dad, but he was really productive. Obviously, Southern Miss, not the best competition, but he's a guy who forced a lot of missed tackles. He had 67 missed tackles forced last year. He's also a really good pass protector. He had one of the best pass protection grades according to PFF, and had a lot of reps doing it. And something to keep in mind too is Mike Kafka was his head coach at the Shrine Bowl game. So he balled out in that game. He was a big reason they won. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on, I think.
I will say a lot of these players we've talked about, all of them, most of them, if not all of them, are very good pass protectors. And as we know in the NFL, if you can't protect the passer, you won't see the field, regardless of pretty much what else you can do. So it's sort of a big thing for us when we look at running backs.
Especially if you're going to get a rookie quarterback in here. One other name I'll throw at you guys before we move on is another sleeper to look out is I think his name is Dylan Laube, Laube. He's from
New Hampshire.
From New Hampshire. He's a white running back. Reminds me a lot of Danny Woodhead back in the day. If you guys remember him, he was at the Senior Bowl and he was absolutely killing it as a receiver. He is a fantastic receiving back. He did it again at the combine and looked really smooth. He tested pretty well there. And he also was he played lower competition, but he was one of the best returners in the country last year. And obviously that's something that's a big need for this team. They brought in Eric Gray hoping he could do that. He was didn't really have a lot of history doing it, and he struggled. But I think you bring in him, he could step in day one and be a returner for you.
Right, so that's running backs done. On to wide receiver. Shane, you're up first. So very, very similar at the top, and then just the tail ends different here. So there is Shane's top 5.
Yeah, so I've gone for number 5, Tez Walker out of North Carolina, 4, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, 3, Rome Odunze out of Washington, 2, Malik Neighbors LSU as well. And then the consensus number 1 for everybody. And I've not seen Kev's top 5, but I imagine he'll be Kev's number 1 as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. out of Ohio.
Kev, shaking your head at Tez Walker straight away there. Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
that's not an indictment of the player, I'm guessing.
No, a little. I mean, like,
where have you got him?
So I've got him. I haven't really placed any that many people outside my top 10, but he's not in it.
I'm just higher on Tez Walker than a lot of other people.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said to Craig, when I sent this, you got the consensus top 4, and then wide receiver 5. I could have picked from 5, 6, 7 other guys. And for me, Tez Walker come down to trusting my gut and everything that I've watched on tape. And when I've been watching tape on Drake May, Tez Walker's always stood out. You know, Drake May's best ball this year came when Tez Walker was eligible again, because he had ineligibility issues at the start of the season. And when he got on the field, that was when Drake May started to play a little bit better. So for me, Tez Walker, it's just a case of trust your eye test, basically. If you've got this guy, just trust your instinct. Not saying he's going to come out, you know, like we said before we went on air, Tez Walker could get the absolute perfect landing spot and be the best wide receiver in this draft class. He could also have one of the worst ones and be at the league in 2 years. It's just the way landing spots.
So Holty has said, I'm sure Kev's number 1 is a fighting Irish wide receiver.
Of course.
So there's Kev's. Obviously very similar, as we said, just one difference at number 5. Kev, do you want to just quickly go through your 5?
Yeah, so my 5, I've gone for Keon Coleman out of FSU. I'll come back to that in a second. Number 4, Brian Thomas Jr., LSU. Number 3, Roma Dunze, Washington. Number 2, Malik Neighbors, LSU. And number 1, Marvin Harrison Jr., Ohio State. But just we were talking about before, it's like number 5 was really, really tricky for me. I've had Coleman there sort of since the process began around that number 5 mark, just from watching film, what I like about him. And also, like, people know this as well who have listened before, but I'll just let Monte know as well. Like, you know, I am a little bit biased in certain things, and I do look at it from a Giants point of view, and I do look at what players would fit what we need in this current draft. I'm not going to lie about that. You know, it's kind of like the way I'm swayed when it comes to kind of players. And the player that I had very, very close, and I might have put in was he was just on the outskirts for me, is AD Mitchell. You know, similar type of player, but just, you know, a bit faster, a little bit more productive down there in Texas. I had them very, very close. But Keon Coleman, I just look at him, I just see him as a really good contested catch. He's got good size, good strength. He's got great hands. You know, he's a really, really good athlete for his size. He's got the punt return ability as well. You know, his 40 time, I think, will hurt him. What's that? What did he go for? 4.61 40 time. You know, so I think, you know that will hurt him a little bit. But I do think, you know, I wouldn't take him at 6, obviously, but you know, I do think he's a player that could fit into what we kind of want to do going forward.
Monte, obviously, I'm guessing your top 4. We were kind of speaking before this. Your top 3 potentially is exactly the same. Brian Thomas, you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, Brian Thomas, I think he's in my top. He's at least in my top 5 right now. I think I'd probably by default put on my top 4. He's definitely, I think, going 4th. That's what it seems like there. I have a little bit more of a bias myself, and I really prefer route runners. That's what I look for in wide receivers. So that I could see that you know, end up winning out when I end up making my rankings. But you know, I do like Brian Thomas Jr. You know, he eats up space super fast. He's really athletic, really tall. You know, I could see him being a true X in the NFL. He's got that size and speed that you want from an outside receiver. You know, former basketball player. He can high point a football. He's really smooth. He might not be like a nuanced route runner, but he's a very smooth route runner. You know, I still have some questions. You watch him versus like Alabama, where he went up against 2 like top of the line corners, and I think he only had like 3 catches for 30 yards in that game. He did not have the best game. You know, I have a little bit of worries, but you know, he's a unique like body movement, and you saw how he tested, man. For a guy that big to run that well, that's hard to, you know, pass up on. I think where I just am on it is, you know, you see some people saying like, well, if we go quarterback at, you know, 6, like maybe we'll come back up for Brian Thomas. And I'm kind of just like, I see him in the same level as all these next guys. I like him, but I don't think he's different. Like I see Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze.
I will say
So-
one frustrating thing with Brian Thomas, just quickly, is that he was very good in the contested catch, but he just seemed to have like concentration drops. Like
Mhm.
you kind of like drop open balls that you think, oh, he should pull these in. So that was a little bit frustrating. And it's one of those things as well. Like he played second fiddle to Malik Neighbors. Could he come in and be a genuine bona fide number one for someone? Is a bit of a question mark.
So talking about Malik Neighbors, Neighbors and Odunze just kind of go back and forth in the mock drafts at 6 at the moment because people, up until I think Jordan Reed a couple of days ago, haven't been brave enough really to start throwing JJ McCarthy's name into the mix. I just want to, Monte, I'll start with you. I'll go to Shane and then Kev afterwards. So if you just want to kind of follow on from each other. Neighbors versus Odunze, what do we see there?
Man, they're close. I can't fault anybody for putting one over the other. I have it the same way you guys do. I have it Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze. I think just Malik Neighbors being a little bit of a younger guy who has that like next level athleticism to be like a special player. I think he gives me a lot of vibes of like Odell Beckham. He has that. You get the ball to him on a slant and he can take it 90 yards for a touchdown. He's such a smooth route runner. He's such a nuanced route runner. Again, something I really look for. Roma Dunze has that too, but in a different way. He doesn't create separation like Malik does. Malik does it with his his bursts. He can hit his move and just take off. While Roma Dunze is a little bit more like Keenan Allen, like where it's just technically sound, and he can get enough space to use his big body, and he has such good body control and really good at using leverage and keeping the ball away from the defender with his hands. And Roma Dunze, and again, a guy who didn't run, unfortunately, but he's supposed to run in like the 4.3s. So for a guy of his size, it's almost his playing weight apparently was 220 pounds and 6'2". He's more of that prototypical size guy. I like the quicker guys. Just a preference, I think, with these two guys. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll be like, so last year's draft class, I absolutely loved Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I would probably have had Neighbors and Odunze above him if they had been in last year's draft, in all honesty. I mean, just so people know what kind of level of player you're talking about here. Neighbors had 9 games where he went for over 100 receiving yards, and Odunze had 10 games where he went for over 100 receiving yards. So you're not kind of talking about, just. And this is players that played for LSU and Washington, so that come up against good defenses, good oppositions. I've got I'm so high on Neighbors to the point where if we take Neighbors at 6, I'm probably going to order his jersey. To be honest with you, that's the kind of faith I've got in Malik Neighbors as a rookie. I think he's going to be absolutely amazing. But again, that's taking nothing away from Rome Odunze. It's one of them that if the 3 quarterbacks or 4 quarterbacks go before and then Harrison goes before us and you're down to Odunze or Neighbors, just take whichever one you think is going to be the best fit at the end of the day. I think, Neighbors is probably going to be the more electric player, but Odunze is probably going to be a better target in the end zone, to be honest.
Yeah, I have these two very close, and they're very different types of players. I mean, Neighbors, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Odunze 6'3", 212 at the combine. Odunze did run 4.45 at the combine, which isn't to be sniffed at. It's not the fastest time, but at his size, it's not to be sniffed at. I mean, Rome Odunze, like I say, he's one of my personal favorites. He's got great size. Some of the catches he makes, he's such an acrobat. And he can catch balls at all 3 levels. Powerful runner once he gets the ball. I mean, his contentious catch rate was 74.1, and Neighbors was 45.5. But the thing was, Neighbors just ran away from people, so he didn't really have to contested catches. But I mean, Malik Neighbors is just speed, explosive. And what I liked about him as well, when he ran routes against zone, he was so good at finding the zones, the soft zones to sit in, to be open. And then when he was a man, he just double moved and ran completely past people. So you can't go wrong with either of these two players. They'll come in and be an absolute massive weapon and number 1 wide receiver on this team.
So that's the big guns. I've kind of got follow-up. So obviously, Shane, when we were speaking, we said wide receiver 5 is interchangeable. You've all said about top 10s and how there's so many. Kev, if I start with you and then I'll go Monte and Shane. Sleeper pick at wide receiver.
Well, you know who I'm picking, don't you, lads? Love me a bit of Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. All right, give it the 1 year production. I don't care. He went for over 1,200 yards. He has 7 touchdowns. The thing was with him, like, he's what, 6'1". He was listed as 6'3" at South Carolina. He actually came in at 6'1", but 221 pounds. He ran a 4.39, like a sub 4.4 at that size is phenomenal. I just think that, like, some of the catches he made, I was just like, wow, just fair play. That looks absolutely class. That looks like one of those things, like he can get a quarterback out of trouble. If he throws like a 50-50 ball, he's going to go and get it. So just one of those players that every time I keep coming back to, I just think, like, he didn't have a great Senior Bowl. He was okay at the Senior Bowl, but I just think, there's something about him that just, I really like.
Monte, your sleeper wide receiver at the moment, your love.
I'll go ahead and I'll say Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. He's definitely a slot guy. And I don't know necessarily if it's a great fit with the Giants when we already have a Wan'Dale Robinson, but we've heard that Giants, like, one of the things they look for in these wide receivers is dogs. And I'll tell you, he's the maybe not physically biggest, but he's got the biggest dog in him in this draft. He legitimately could play the running back position, and I don't think he'd have any issue doing it. When we did our previews for the wide receiver position back in, I think, like September or something like that, the word I used, the phrase I used for Malachi Corley, I said I use more Debo than Debo. Like, he seeks physicality. He tries to run people over. He's consistent. He had the most screen yards in the country. I think he had the most missed forced tackles last year. His tape last year was definitely a little bit better than this year, but he once you get that guy, the ball in his hands, he is such a competitor. He was more than just the best wide receiver on their team. He was their team. You gave him the ball, and he just found a way to get yards, get first downs. You teach him a little bit of nuance, teach him to be a little bit better of a route runner. I think he could be a special wide receiver. I think he's like 220 pounds or something like that. Maybe I think he ended up lighter than that, but he legitimately could be a running back in this league. He is that physical.
Shane,
he came in at 215 at 5'11".
Yeah, that's running back size.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Corley was going to be my pick. So I'm going to drop back. Probably someone who's probably maybe go on day 3 potentially, and that's Malik Washington out of Virginia. I think he's a little bit of a sleeper. Ran a 4.47 at the combine. I think he's kind of one of them players who I think more than likely he's probably going to be a day 3 pick, and he's one of them ones that kind of, I think whoever picks him might turn and say they've got a little bit of a steal there, especially because he's such a deep wide receiver class. I think someone like Malik Washington could easily be a day 2 pick any other kind of year, but due to the depth that you got this year, I think he really stands out. He went, I think, some like 8 out of 10 games he went over 100 yards receiving. One of them he went 97 yards. So, he's a threat in the passing game. Like, just look at his stats now. He had only 3 drops on the year, 11 contested catches, 9 touchdowns, over 1,300 yards. So yeah, I'll go for Malik Washington as my sleeper pick.
Love the slot guys.
Yeah. I'll say, you're lucky Sal isn't here. We would have probably stole both your guys, because that's who Sal would have said. Sal's been Malik Washington's been his guy for a long time. He lives in Virginia, so he's been kind of seeing him on TV as he's been watching this year, and he's been telling me about this guy, and he blew up the combine. So he definitely was justified a lot last weekend. Had the most slot yards in the country this year, had the most missed tackles forced of any wide receiver in this country. He's getting knocked a little bit because of his size, but he has been extremely productive. So I think that's a really good sleeper pick.
So nobody went Xavier Worthy, fastest man on the planet, no?
I'll tell you of a guy that I wasn't sure as far as how deep I should go, so I kind of went in the middle. I'll tell you the guy that I think will end up in my top 5. Just give you a name is Lad McConkey. I think Lad McConkey might end up. I was alluding before the show that there was a guy that I was debating a little bit, but I had to see how he tested. With these white dudes, he's like as athletic as they look in the fields. Like, is this guy really running like 4.4, 4.3s? And he went out there and ran a 4.39. But man, he is he's like inside outside. He is like one of the most nuanced route runners in this draft. He's so good at finding that soft spot in the zone. His feet are so good. He's really good at using leverage and it's precise in his cuts. He really good. He's like 6 foot. He's got good size. I think, he could be one of the best receivers in this draft.
I think the Senior Bowl opened people's eyes to him, didn't it? He was just unguardable in the Senior Bowl.
Him and Roman Wilson really blew it up there. Another guy, you can talk all day about these receivers. There are so many good wide receivers in this draft.
And the one last name, I think I got his first name right. Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Obviously, he went up against ran. I think it was a second. Was it? Sorry, a 0.1 of a second faster than his brother, or something like that. I know he definitely takes bragging rights in the McCaffrey household. Holty's obviously on the same wavelength as me here, talking about McCaffrey. Another white guy, Ricky Pearsall, is another guy that someone's just brought up.
Yeah. Well, the all white squad.
We don't get a lot. Next, we'll be talking about white cornerbacks.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Really need.
But yeah, man, all those guys are really good. I actually had I do a college fantasy football league, and I had Luke McCaffrey on my team this year. He was a good player. And Ricky Pearsall is again really, really good player. He had catch of the year in college football. So two guys to definitely look out for.
Right. That kind of brings us to the big guns, the most talked about position, the one everyone's excited for. And although the number 1 pick looks like it to be a done deal, there's uncertainty how many will go in the first round, whether the Giants will take one. Hell, somebody said that we could see QB go 1, 2, 3, 4, which would be an interesting turn of events. So let's get into it. Kev, we'll go with you first. Shane, you're next, and obviously there's a slight difference here. So Kev, that's your top 5 there. So walk us through it.
Yeah, so I've gone with number 5, Bo Nix out of Oregon. Number 4, JJ McCarthy from Michigan. Number 3, Jaden Daniels from LSU. Number 2, Drake May, North Carolina. And number 1, Caleb Williams out of USC.
And Shane, we'll just go straight in with yours there. So slightly different.
Yeah, so I've gone for Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington at 5, Bo Nix, Oregon at 4, Drake May, North Carolina at 3, Jaden Daniels, LSU at 2, and then Caleb Williams, USC at 1.
Monte, the thoughts? I know you're a big JJ man, so
yeah.
Shane not having him in the top 5 there.
Yeah, Shane slighted my boy. But no, it's a really good quarterback class, and the way I'll just go through kind of. I've been pretty open about my tiers on this, so I think there's like 6 first rounders. That's what I say. At least like it could be first rounders. I think I've been saying this. I think Caleb Williams and Drake May are like my top tier. Caleb Williams at top 1, 2. Then personally, I'm very high in JJ McCarthy. I've been very high in him. JJ McCarthy is actually my QB 3. But and then Jaden Daniels my QB 4. I have them in the same tier. I think that they're more of a as far as a grade, I have them probably more of like a mid first. But quarterbacks always get pushed up. So and then I have for me Bo Nix and Michael Penix. I have Michael Penix, then Bo Nix, and those are kind of more of the first round, second round, like they could go either or type of area. Really, really good players all around. But we can talk about it, you guys. Who do you guys want to dive into first for these?
Well, I've kind of got a personal kind of affiliation. I have so many friends with so many different teams that we all support, and none of us really support the same. So in my friend group, it's all very different. Now, one of my best mates is a Bears fan, so I know she's tuning in. So let's start off with Caleb Williams, because I get texts every so often of, he sounds like a bit of a prima donna, and is that, should I be worried, etc. So let's start off with Caleb. So let's bring his stats up on screen, and Monte, do you want to just fire at it, and then Kev, do you want to jump in afterwards, and then Shane? So there we go.
Let's do it. So, I'm not overly worried about Caleb Williams. He's gotten a bad rep in the media. I think a lot of it's just, he's not afraid to be himself, and I think some stuff gets overblown with it. Everything we heard from the combine, and you hear this guy speak, this guy's a good dude who just loves football. He absolutely loves football. And he is extremely talented. He's as talented of a quarterback that's ever come out of this draft. Out of the draft, I would say. I wouldn't necessarily know if I would rank him over, Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck as pure prospects. If you're, trying to grade the perfect prospect with the perfect size and all that type of stuff, because he has some things against him. He has some fumbling issues. He has he's a little bit smaller than some of these guys, but as far as talent goes, he's oozing with it. I mean, he can make a throw from any arm angle, from any platform, and it's effortless, like flick of the wrist, and can fit it into small windows across the field. He has that like Mahomes-esque ability to escape from pressure and make plays. He just has this innate ability to play quarterback. And he's truly a special quarterback, and I think he has like top of the league potential. I would not pass on Caleb Williams if I was a Bears fan. I would run that card in and make him my franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything said there. I mean, just going off PFF grades, and 21, 19.3, 22, 91.8, last year, 90.3. But exactly all of that, like, he's got great instincts, he's a playmaker. The only sort of like issue, and it's a small one, and you should be able to coach it out, is he just plays a little bit too much hero ball. He just sort of wants to make every throw instead of just taking what the defense is giving you, throw the ball away or something like that. As everyone knows, I'm a huge Notre Dame fan, and this past season, he threw 3 interceptions in one half against Notre Dame just because he was trying to do too much. Now, I don't think he's thrown 3 interceptions his whole career before that game. So that was just a case of like just rein it in a little bit. But that can be coached. But yeah, I mean, it ticks so many boxes for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think all the stuff with Caleb kind of reminds me a little bit of the stuff that you had with Kayvon. Obviously, Kayvon, when he was coming out, was good. Talk about him going number 1 overall, and then all of a sudden, there's just these like little rumours and chat. Oh, does he love football? Is he invested properly? And that's kind of very similar to what's happened to Caleb during the season. Now, admittedly, Caleb's not helped himself with painting his fingernails and crying after losing a game. That doesn't help yourself. It doesn't paint a picture. But you can absolutely guarantee he would have been questioned on that during interviews at the Combine this week, and that probably would have been just put to bed there and then. Overcoming adversity, and that's the kind of things that you're going to really want to hear from these quarterbacks. But what the lads have said is absolutely spot on. And like I say, just for me, I just feel like it's maybe someone just trying to be a little bit different, trying to mix it all up, make stories up about a player, just to try and mix draft rankings up sometimes.
I mean, we talk about
content.
We talk about Xavier Worthy earlier and him sort of breaking that record. I don't know if you noticed, but Williams and May were like the first players there. Like they sprinted up that field. And Williams might not have done anything, but he stuck around and apparently was a very, very good kind of team player, trying to G up everyone else, just wanting everyone to kind of do their best. And I think that speaks more about his character than potentially a lot of the stuff that does come out, where because he's different, there is a lot of that kind of chatter around there. Would you guys kind of be quietly confident to say that he probably goes into the top 15 quarterbacks in the league once he joins? Would it be easy enough to say that?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think he just oozes talent, and I'll say, like, we were talking about, like, Kev mentioned, like, he does have some stuff he needs to clean up, and he doesn't take the easy check down all the time, and he tries to play hero ball. But if you look at, like, some of his, like, you just go on PFF and you look at some of his numbers in the short area, his it's crazy how productive and how good he is in this, because when he's playing that quick ball game, he uses that arm angles and he uses the velocity he puts out there, and you can get that ball into good position. So I think even if he doesn't come into the league right away trying to light it up, you can put him in a quick ball type of game, and he'll kill it. I think he could be amazing at that type of game while you're getting him ready to unleash him.
What about this medical fiasco being a red flag? I get it. He said he only wants to give his medical stuff to the people who are going to draft him, which kind of makes sense when you're not really going to be looked at past one. Really, you shouldn't be looked at past one. So I think the medical thing was kind of blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
Go on, Chief, go on.
Who was it that was drafted years ago, way before our time, and
Prime time.
was it prime time? And he asked where you're picking, and they were like 8.
Yeah, that's right.
That was to the Giants.
Yeah,
it was to the Giants.
I mean, you've got that self belief and the confidence, fair enough. But I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it. You never know when you might get traded or when you might become a free agent. But that's going to be years down the line, if ever.
So 2 and 3 then. 2 and 3, you are interchangeable for you both. Is that an indictment of the two quarterbacks? Because they are very different. As Kev, I'm going to steal from Kev here. They're very different flavors, aren't they, May and Daniels? So Kev, do you want to go with why May was over Daniels first, then Shane, and then I'll let Monte do a little double act on the two of them?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had Jane Daniels on like a different level to Drake May, as in like I have Drake May closer to Williams than I do Daniels to May. I just think Drake May's just got the prototypical NFL frame. He's very, very athletic. He'd be like a more athletic Daniel Jones. He's great in the pocket. Like, he's really good at feeling pressure. He's got arm talent. He's got a strong arm. He's got good placement. He's got good touch. He's sort of like, if you were to make up a prototypical NFL quarterback, like this is the guy you'd want. I mean, last year he threw for 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He rushed for 582 yards as well. I mean, I think like the way I look at him, if he's if you want to try to, I don't like doing comps, but like you hear people talk about comps, like to give people an idea of who he could be. He's kind of like a Justin Herbert type of player. So like we all drilled over Justin Herbert and wanted him when he didn't come out in the draft. To sort of get someone like that now would be phenomenal. I mean, is on the downside though, his decision making, he can be a little bit reckless sometimes, and some of his passes can be inconsistent. But I'll let Shane talk about Jaden Daniels. But just one negative for Jaden Daniels for me is the size of him. I mean, and also when he's a good runner, but when he runs and takes contact, he gets hit. He gets absolutely annihilated. And with his light frame, you would just worry about, is he going to stay on the field for me? But I'll hand it over to Shane to talk about Jaden Daniels and what he likes.
Yeah, for me, just come down to the fact that I think Drake May's probably got a higher floor, but Daniels has got a higher ceiling. And I think when you look at the way the NFL is kind of evolving, I just think Jaden Daniels is going to offer more to an NFL offense than what Drake May will. Drake May, for me, I'm not saying he's purely a pocket passer, but, he's going to be better in the pocket. Daniels can make things happen. You play a lot of play action with him, RPOs with him. That's the way the league's kind of progressing. And, I mean, he's kind of there's I'm not going to make these comps, but obviously there's been comps like in regards to Lamar Jackson with him, and I think that's maybe like a little bit unfair on Jaden because Lamar he's such a good quarterback, and Jaden's obviously going to be taken a lot higher. But for me, it just comes down to I think when you look at the way NFL offenses are progressing, Jaden Daniels can win a game, he can change a game more than what Drake May can, for my opinion. And there was a crazy stat that I seen the other week about. I think it was like yards gained, and Daniels is like ridiculously above the next nearest. I can't think what the stat was, but it was like
explosive plays.
Yeah, I think it might have been that. Like he's at 20 points summit, and I think the next nearest is at like 8.
Yeah, I know for his explosive plays, he had it was in between his running and his passing. He was well above anybody else for plays over 15 yards.
But with Jen Daniels as well, he has got his good traits. I mean, he's got a good, very, very good deep ball. His decision making is very good. He does lose accuracy if the pocket collapses a bit on him, and he tries to get rid of the ball. But when someone throws for 3,800 yards, 40 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and they also run for 1,250 yards. I mean, that's some serious production. And there's one stat that I love about him as well. It's and I think it's a stat that we would all would mean a lot to us. Is third down percentage. I mean, he's got 71.4 third down percentage, which is second highest in this class, I think. I mean, it's higher than Caleb Williams at 64.9. It's higher than Drake May at 59.5. So it's just so that type of stat really stands out to me as in okay, he can move the chains on third down.
Yeah,
Monte.
Yep. Yeah, so I'll give some of my positives and negatives for each guy. I'll start with Drake May because, like I said, he's my number 2. He's in a tier above the rest of the guys. I love Drake May. I think you hit on a lot of it, Kev. He's the prototypical guy, and his ability to just similar with Caleb, the way he can just be totally off platform and just flick his wrist and the ball can go 60 yards is insane. I think from a throwing standpoint, he's just an elite. He has an elite arm, and he oozes talent from that aspect. And I also love him as his ability to, create plays with his legs. He doesn't do it in the same way Jaden Daniels does. He's not that as athletic as him, but he's a big body who gets out of the pocket and, looks to throw the ball. And I'm pretty sure I read something about him getting the most first downs with his legs because he's just so strong and he fights for that. He doesn't get as many explosive plays with it, but he'll pick up the first down. He's always out there trying to make plays. On the negative side, me and Sal do this all the time. We've been saying all year he's a big dummy. I mean, he's got that Josh Allen to him where he'll just be grab people are wrapping around him. He'll hook shot a ball over his head and try to get it to receiver. And it works a lot of the time, but when it doesn't, man, does he look dumb for trying that stuff. He'll be totally off platform trying to make a pass, and sometimes it'll work, and other times because his mechanics and his footwork are totally off because he's trying to make a play, he'll totally misfire. Either it's out of bounds or interception or what. He has a lot of stupid plays when you watch him, but the stuff he does do is incredible. I think when you're drafting Drake May, you almost drafting him knowing that stuff comes with it. Where I'm drafting Drake May, okay, that he might be a Josh Allen type with the dumb stuff, a Brett Favre type with the dumb stuff, but sometimes he's going to just make incredible plays. And so part of me is obviously he needs to get better. He needs to clean up his footwork. He needs to clean up some of his mechanics, but I think a lot of it's just him. It's just his play style, and you kind of just. It's kind of like Caleb Williams. Yeah, he does play out of structure, and you want him to play more in structure. But at the same time, you gotta let what makes these guys special, be special about him. So I'll say that for him. For Jaden Daniels, I like Jaden Daniels a lot too. He has a lot of elite traits about him. His running ability is elite. It's different than Lamar's. Lamar is more make you miss in a phone booth, while Jaden Daniels is more he there's two things I think that make his running special. One, he'll set you up in open field so well, and he just moves around you and he navigates the field so well, and he doesn't lose speed ever when he's running. Ever lose speed. It's like they turned off stamina type of thing, and he can just run forever and be the exact same speed. It's crazy, effortless in and out of his cuts. The other thing is his deep ball is fantastic. His deep ball and his like touch throws where he can just throw those balls into the bucket. He throws with leverage and he plays it perfectly. On the negative side for Jaden Daniels, you mentioned the size is an issue a little bit. Especially like, man, this guy, he when he runs, he's like Johnny Knoxville. He just goes out there. It's like, come on, give it to me. He just gets hit and laid out, man. Like he's not afraid to take contact. And just like I said to the other two guys, I want him to be himself. This is also a benefit of him. He's always wants to be a competitor and get the extra yards, but it's like, I also need you to protect yourself a little bit. So it's you don't want to change him, but you want to reel him in a little bit. I'll say I don't love his like the zip on his balls. I think is a fantastic touch passer, but I think when you see him throwing outside the numbers with velocity, I can see him those balls can lose some accuracy and die on him a little bit. Also over the middle field, he hasn't had a lot of success. So, I want to see more of him driving the football than the touch passes. I think that it's funny as you see him miss some reads where I'm just like I'm watching. I'm like that guy's wide open, but I think Bonnie Skinner tweeted this where he's like, you watch him and he's like, you're like he's open, throw it there. Oh, 6-yard run. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't know if that's always going to show up in the NFL, but I mean he does it in college. You can't fault him for it. But sometimes I see issues with him reading the field. My only other issue with him outside of that, and this might be the part of it that makes me the most nervous, is I try to bring like an analytical aspect to when I look at prospects, and a huge part of that is breakout age. And he's been a good prospect his entire life, but like he's always been a good quarterback, but he's just never. It's just what scares me is it's like a Joe Burrow, for example. People bring up him, but Joe Burrow sat on the bench, and then when he finally got the opportunity to start, he didn't come in until the summer. He only had like a couple months training with this guy, an okay year, and once he had a full offseason, he went off. With Jaden Daniels, that guy's been starting. He started for 4 years, 4 years of starting, and then his 5th year, he broke out. If it wasn't for COVID, he would have been a 5th-round pick. He wouldn't have had the 5th year. He would have had to declare for the draft. So that scares me a little bit, is like, did he partially succeed just because he had so much more experience in age over these guys? Or did he really just develop that much as a player? But, at the same time, it's hard to argue with the stats because, he had one of the best Heisman campaigns that anybody's ever had. So,
he also had 2 pretty good wide receivers there, didn't he?
Yeah, that too. Like, so he's the floor of him makes me nervous, but he is a special talent who like has truly elite parts of his game.
Shane, you've mentioned before you would not draft Michael Penix Jr. because of the injury concerns, yet he is sitting there at number 5.
Yeah, I knew this was coming.
I don't forget, mate. I don't forget.
No, so yeah, he has had injury issues. I think it's 2 ACLs, 2 shoulder injuries. But everything I've sort of seen and read over the last week or so, he came back pretty damn clean on his medicals at the combine. So I think Michael Penix is being quite underrated in all honesty. I think there's a very good chance he could go round 2, depending on if people really want to overdraft these quarterbacks, and that's always a possibility because he's the quarterback position. But I think purely when you look at him from a talent perspective, you take away the medical stuff, I think he's a solid round 1 pick in my eyes, and I do really like Michael Penix. And like I said, he's had the injury issues, but I decided to put him in there just based on the fact that what I've seen on tape and the fact that everything's come back pretty clean for him from the medicals, that I'm going to make an exception this once. And then if he goes down with an ACL in his first year, I'm never going to put someone on a medical report again who's in my top 5. I'm never putting a Wilkinson player in my top 5. They're going to make the list.
But just
Right.
just give some
Go on,
context
Kev.
to that. Like I think he's been brilliant all year, but again, look at his wide receiving core of Roma Dunze, McMillan in the slot, Polk on the other wide receiver on the outside. But like he's another one. He's going to be a 24-year-old rookie when he comes in. He's played 6 seasons in college football. He got that COVID extra year. He played 4 years at Indiana, I think it was, and then 2 years at Washington. But like those injuries concerns we're talking about, like their first 4 seasons, all 4 years, an injury finished his season for him. Was it 2 knees and 2 shoulders or something like that? And like hopefully it does all check out. But also one of the biggest negatives for me is that he's not a runner. He is a pocket passer. Like he won't run like these other guys that we've talked about or talking about now. You know, he's very much a pocket passer. Now, did he do that well? Yes, he went for nearly 5,000 yards. So he did do that well. But like I said, I kind of watched the national championship game and I was thinking, right, come on, Penix, show me something. Like, are we going to go and Odunze as well? I was like, no, I want to see these guys, and they just really, really underwhelmed in that game. And I'm not going to drop people significantly for one game, obviously. But I think the lack of mobility worries me more with Michael Penix than his actual injury history.
So obviously, we're just poking over an hour and a half now. So this is our normal sort of time of wrapping up. But I just want to, because quarterback is such a big position. There's a couple of things. So Monte, I can't not let you talk about JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give you guys my spiel on JJ McCarthy because he's somebody that I've been high on for a while now. I liked him a lot in like the 2022 season, and then but I saw him as more of a mid-rounder. Then Sal and I went to go do our quarterback reviews. I saw this kid, and I was surprised how much I liked him. The more and more I watched him, he has a hose of an arm, guys. Like when you watch him throw, he can absolutely throw a piss missile into a tight window. And you saw it at the combine where, it kind of got confirmed. We were seeing he threw 61 miles per hour when they were testing the velocity, which is the second highest time that they've ever recorded. There's a few tied for 62, but that was the only time anyone's ever thrown 61. So yeah, 62 is a record. He threw 61. He throws absolute missiles. He is a great athlete. I mean, you look at his 3-cone from the combine. That was like a top percentile 3-cone. It's the best since 2018. And you can see that in his play. He's so good at getting outside the pocket and creating for himself and throwing on the run. I think he's one of the best players in this draft at throwing on the run. The way he gets his hips around and can get out on the move and launch these balls into tight windows. I really like what his projection. You mentioned Michael Penix, like there's not the moving aspect. Well, like that's something that JJ McCarthy has that I really like. Is he's going to be somebody you can get out on the move, and I think also can add something to your run game. I think if he didn't run the 40, I don't know if he will at the Pro Day, but I think he probably run somewhere in the 4.5s. I heard a 4.48, but I think it's probably closer to the 4.5s. And look, he also, he ran that good 3-cone, but he also got up to 219. That was one of my worries about him was his weight, but he kind of, checked that box by getting up to that weight and then also running well. It's like, hey, this isn't that fake. Like, look, if it is, then I'm running 100th percentile in that 3-cone. So, obviously the worries with him is the body of work. They don't put the ball into JJ McCarthy's hands and say, go win this football game. And, they rely heavy on the run game, but what I come back to on that is they didn't have to. They won a national championship. He lost one game his entire career. That's just how their offense works. Obviously, I don't think you can throw it away and say like, don't worry about that. It's obviously something to consider, But I do think it's something that you can explain, and there's good reason for it. I'll also bring up is we talked a little bit about third downs with JJ McCarthy. There is a stat that was on 3rd and 7s. I don't know if I have it on me, but essentially, he was the best by far. The only person who had a better completion percentage was Bo Nix, but he had I think he got something like 70, or no, it was 50. It was 50, about 50% of third and 7 plus, about 50% of the time he was converting a first down. And I think the next highest was like 30% or something like that.
Yes,
So
please.
the thing is when they didn't ask him to put the ball in his hands constantly and go win the game. But when everybody knew JJ McCarthy was going to pass the ball, everybody on that defense knew he consistently, time in and time again, he converted. And that's something I think is important to look for in these quarterbacks. Well, I think the most important thing is I see him as a guy who's still, he just turned 21. He played the entire season at 20 years old. He has a huge arm. He has great athleticism. He was well coached. I think, with a lot of these quarterbacks, you look at there's some stuff where you have to unteach something and then reteach him how to do it better. I don't see any of that with JJ McCarthy. I think that he needs to improve in a lot of aspects of his game, but I don't think there's anything you need to unteach him. I think he just needs to continue to improve in a lot of parts of his game where he's just not quite there. But he's not being taught bad habits. When that's a plus of having Jim Harbaugh as your head coach. I think this love for him that you're hearing about top 10, top 5 is real. I just posted something on X today, or Sal said back, it was November 10th. We did our preview. We said, the body of the work isn't there, but this kid's projectable, and I think he's going to end up in the top 10. And we've been saying it since then. And it's finally starting to come around, and I couldn't be happier for him. I hope he's going to be available for us at 6. I would be all in at taking JJ McCarthy. I'm a big fan of his. I prefer Drake May. Like I said, I have a tier ahead, but JJ McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, either of them at 6, I would be perfectly happy with.
Just to add to that as well, I agree with everything you said there. There's one thing I will add that I just kept coming back to me when watching him, is that he throws so well on the run, running out both sides, whether he's running to his right or his left. Whereas most QBs can throw well running to the right if they're right-handed, but not so much going the other way to the left. But he just consistently makes throws running both ways, and especially running to your left for right-handed quarterback. It's so difficult to square up your shoulders and get that ball out and accurate. And he just does that time after time. And that was a big thing for me when I was watching.
Yeah, the way he can flip his hips around to make his pass is the big thing. It's just like he just so quickly gets his hips around to get him square to the receiver and make that pass. It's really impressive part of his game. Definitely, there's a lot of stuff he needs to prove on. I would say throwing the run, he's as good as anyone in this class.
So if we try and wrap this up, we've got one more on the board there, and then there's one question that's come in. Shane, do you want to just give us a quick rundown on Bo Nix?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably higher on Bo Nix than a lot of people. He's at QB4 for me, but I wouldn't take him at 6, but I also wouldn't hate maybe trading him back a little bit and still picking him up. Where's he's let me just get his stats up. Sorry. So yeah, Bo Nix, he transferred from Auburn, where his dad played, and it kind of took him a little bit of while to get going. He didn't have a great first season, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he wasn't a horrendous season at Oregon, but it was, not the hype that kind of was expected with him. But then this year he threw for 4,454 yards, 45 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. He only had 5 turnover-worthy plays as well, according to PFF. There's been a bit of concern that maybe he's a scheme kind of based player, but I just think that, someone like Bo Nix, I wonder what someone like a Dable could do with him. I'm really high on Bo Nix, and I've probably got him closer to QB3 than what I've got him closer to QB5 personally.
And then finally, there was a comment here. This is one for you, Monte. Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I'm not super high on Rattler. I like him. I don't. First of all, I don't like him for the Giants just off the fact that the timeline I don't think lines up. If this was last year or 2 years ago, I'd be more interested in giving this guy a couple years to develop and see really good quarterback coaches. Something I wish we did, but we didn't. But I think he's going to be a really high end backup in this league. I think that's a good fit for him. I think he does have high end traits, and I think he's really developed to be a quality quarterback. I think he had a lot of bad habits at Oklahoma, and I think he's fixed a lot of them at South Carolina, and he's been a lot more reliable of a quarterback. I would love to see him go to a situation like the Chiefs, for example, and sit behind Patrick Mahomes. And then, obviously they're different players, but an example I brought up is like, you saw like Tyrod Taylor sat behind Joe Flacco for 4 years. He hit free agency. And I think that time to sitting behind him and getting a chance after that was really good for him. I think if you try pushing Spencer Rattler out in the field year one, even year two, I don't think it would be good for him. I think he's still far away from an NFL quarterback. I think you look at a guy like Malik Willis. I think, if you went to the right situation, maybe things could have been different, but I think he got totally ruined by having to get put out in that field early. So I'm not huge on him here, but if he goes to the right situation, I could see him, continuing that ascent that we saw at South Carolina, just learning underneath a veteran quarterback and a good coach.
Well, that's it. Offense done. 2 weeks. Hopefully, all the listeners and people who have watched along have enjoyed us going through them and now have a bit of a better idea about the prospects. That's really why we do this. Myself and Dan do not paint ourselves as experts. And we've both said many a time that we enjoy this just to kind of get a better feel for a lot of the higher prospects, even if, the Giants aren't going to select them all, as we're evidently going to get to. Defense will be next. That will be coming in 3 weeks' time. Free agency takes precedence, I'm afraid, and that is fast approaching. Now, before we go, Monte, I just wanted to give you a chance to add something around the sort of tight end defensive line. We went through those last week. Anybody who really, really sort of takes your fancy at either tight end or on the O-line? Maybe a round 2 prospect?
Sure. So, tight end, I'll plug Sal's guy here, Ben Sinnott. You go look at him at the combine. He tested off the charts. I was texting I'm like, shout out Sal, because he jumped like 40 inches, something crazy like that. He's like 250 pounds. He's a really good all round player. He can play fullback. He can play tight end. He's a really good athlete. And that, tight end, nobody, these college teams don't know how to use them. So nobody knows how to use tight ends except for Georgia. So you got to look for the best athletes and just hope you can project them. Ben Sinnott's definitely got to keep an eye on. Defensive line, I'm going to go ahead and a guy who's been falling is Braylon Trice. Braylon Trice has been continuing to fall down boards out of Washington. He's led the country in pressures, I believe, the last 2 years in a row. He said that's 70 plus pressures. He is he came into the combine a little bit smaller. I think he was just trying to get lighter because he's not a very good tester and was trying to get the best numbers he could out there. I think he does play closer to 260 on the field, and man, he's got great moves. Uses a ton of power when he plays, and I think he's just going to be a good football player at the next level. I think he's a good day 2, second round type target.
He's one of those players that the combine did not help. If anything, it sort of made people question some things. But again, he's one of those players that you just go back to the tape. And like you said on the tape, he just gets pressures. He just makes moves on people. And he just looks the real deal.
Yeah, we brought another good follow, KSIXI. We had him on the other week, and he brought up a quote, which I think brings home. It's like, for a lot of these guys, they see these guys showing up to the combine, and they're just praying that they measure in short, measure in light, run terribly because they just want them to fall. The tape is what matters at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Right, so there we have it. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have this week. However, as I said earlier in the show, we'll be back next Wednesday as both Kev and I dive into the free agency carnage by having a live show mere hours after the new league year starts. That's going to be fun. We should also have friend of the pod, Irish NFL show, Brian O'Leary, and potentially some revivalists making an appearance as well. Almost 100 people have watched this pretty much consistently throughout the whole episode, which is definitely a record for this podcast. So thank you, Monte, for bringing the masses to the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. Quarterbacks were always going to be popular, and it just made sense to get someone like yourself on who, like you said, has really been looking at this class ever since November.
Yeah.
Before you go, just give the listeners who potentially don't know about the He's a Giant podcast, they should do, but they might not. Just give them a flavour as to what you and Sal kind of go through.
Sure. So yeah, He's a Giant pod. You can follow us on Twitter. He's a Giant on YouTube. We're on Spotify and Apple. But yeah, man, we're a Giants based podcast that does NFL draft and just really like team structure type stuff. We've broken down free agents. We break down potential coaching hires and everything draft. We started at the very beginning of the year back in August. We went through every single position group and gave our top fives. We've done mock drafts and we gave like previews. We previewed the Senior Bowl. We had, I think, 40 players for the Senior Bowl, and we previewed them. We've probably gone over 100 people at this point that me and Sal have looked at and reviewed. So follow us. Some stuff is a little bit deeper, and if you're not super into the draft stuff, you don't have to watch that. But some stuff is more fun. We'll do the mock drafts and things like that. So whatever your flavor is, I think we bring a unique view of year-round draft stuff to the Giants fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we've really enjoyed having you on. So we'll make sure that we catch up again. Maybe see if we can get Sal on. We can try and get a Kev and Shane versus you and Sal mock draft off. See how that goes.
Sounds fun.
Kev, Shane, Steve has just said thanks for exposing your rookie boards for the fantasy draft. Steve's obviously taking notes already for next year. Obviously, got to beat the champ first. Anything to add before we go, boys?
They've just been great chatting, obviously talking about the news and the rumours, and then sort of really diving into the running back, wide receiver and quarterback. I mean, most people agree that's the exciting positions, definitely the most exciting positions on offence. And, like I said at the start of the show, thanks ever so much for having Monte on. It's been absolutely amazing getting his thoughts on mine and Kev's top five and where me and Kev might have gone wrong. And we're always learning at the end of the day. So much appreciated. Love the podcast. Keep up the work that you and Sal do. And hopefully we can get you on maybe not too long after the draft to talk about the prospects that we've actually drafted.
Yeah, man. Anytime. I will have to work around Sal's schedule a little bit, but I work from home. I'm good to go.
Yeah, just reiterate that. Just it's good to have, brilliant to have you on. It's a great podcast. I especially love the Senior Bowl preview. I found that to go over so many guys going into it was great for us to be able to watch the build up to the week and stuff. And even give my boy JD Bertrand a shout out as well from Notre Dame. I was like, all right, these boys know what they're talking about. So, but yeah, just great to have you on. And like I said, go listen to that podcast because we are in a build mode. We're in rebuild mode, and they've said we want to build through the draft. And these guys are like top notch for that type of content.
Right. So as always, remember to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also hit the bell to get notified of when you're live. And if you're not already following us and or Monte or Sal or the He's a Giant podcast, make sure you find them on the socials. My thanks as ever go to Shane and to Kev for joining me, Monte for coming on and giving us his insight. We are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.